Very close with, brother in poetry and humor. One of us is funny. And he's been here before. He totally saved us one year when the poet that was supposed to come weaned out like 1 week before. And I called George to ask if he knew anyone that we could get, and he said, I'll do it. And people love him. And you'll see why in a minute. George Bilgere.
Yeah, who would turn down the chance to do something like this, come to an event like this, and get to spend a weekend with Alan and Evie in their magical house? We kind of almost screwed it up today because as we were driving in, I came in with my wife and kids. We were driving through those intricate mountain roads, getting to the house, and we almost killed Evie on her bike. So. I guess we still would have held the event, but it would have been different without you here. Anyone who lives around here, you bike 7,000 miles a year. So everyone who lives in this area has, at one time or another, run into her on their bike. And she just gets back up every time. It's amazing. Also, what an honor for me to share a stage with Greg Orr, who's a poet I've admired since the 1980s and who's been such an important presence in the literary landscape of America. I love that reading, Greg. That was just fantastic. I'm going to read some poems tonight, mostly from this new chapbook put out by Rattle Press. And what's exceptional about this chapbook is when it came out, they sent me, usually a press will send you 5 contributors' copies or maybe 10. Rattle sent me 500. And I'd like to try to sell them all tonight. So, great stocking stuffer. And that's, and I want to say, this is the first time in all the readings I've ever given that both of my kids are here, and my wife Jody, my son Alex, and my son Michael. And they have to listen. So, first poem I'll read. Many years ago, I lived in Colorado, and I was a dull kind of person, an English teacher, loved classical music, I liked bird watching, but there was one kind of cool thing I did. I had a big motorcycle, and I loved in the summers traveling around the West, hiking and camping in Colorado, Utah, Arizona. And this bike kind of made me less dull, I think. That was the plan. So I'm going to read, this poem is called Biker. I was due for a shower, so I pulled up to a little motel, the Wagon Wheel or some such, in some dusty Nevada town, and as I trudged across the parking lot with my boots and bomber jacket, my red bandana and scruffy beard, the big old Harley cooling in the sun, I saw, behind the office window, a pale, slender arm reach down and turn the vacancy sign around to no vacancy. Oh, owner of the pale, slender arm, I have not forgotten you. From 30 years down that desert highway, from this life of subcommittee meetings and colonoscopies, not to mention mortgage payments and dental bills, braces for both kids, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for finding me unkempt and possibly smelly, and for making me feel, however briefly, badass. Only time that has ever happened. Everyone says having kids, it's a chance for you to relive your own childhood, and that's certainly been true. And watching Michael be 9 reminded me of being 9 again. It's a certain special time in life of 9-ness that he made me almost remember, and I wrote this poem about it called 9. I am standing by the pop machine at the gas station, drinking a root beer. It cost a dime, my whole allowance. My bike, a J.C. Higgins 3-speed, looks cool. I just washed it and waxed the blue fenders. Grown-ups are moving around me in kind of a fog. Actually, I feel sorry for grown-ups with their neckties, their dark jackets, and serious talk. I am wearing low-top Keds. Their shoes are hard and gigantic. Try climbing a tree in those shoes. How am I supposed to know that an old white-haired guy, a grown-up, is watching me from his desk in the future, writing down every move I make? Why would anybody even do that? If there's one thing I don't like, it's writing. Writing in division. This root beer is actually excellent. It's a hot day. My fenders are waxed. Since I was last here a few years ago, I have had, as many people my age have had, cataract surgery. And oh my God, it was just the most incredible. I'm sure if you've been through this, you realize that you waited way, way, way too long. I finished the operation, and you get one eye done, then you wait a week and get the other eye done. And when both eyes were like grooved in, I'd be walking around the house, and my wife would say, "Could I ask you a favor?" "Yeah." "Would you stop saying 'oh wow' every 5 minutes?" But I would say, "Oh wow." So this is a poem about my cataract surgery. Look at the bird bath, I say to my wife, a week after the operation, and the daisies. I mean, just look at them. Right, she says, not looking up from her phone. She's gotten used to this. Look at the moss, I say, pointing to the moss on the stones lining the flower bed. Look at the green, like a green fire, like it's burning from within. Yeah, she says, it's green. And I say to my son, look at the crocosmia, like a red flame. The what? He says, not looking up from his Nintendo Switch. I hate to interrupt, I say to my wife, but just look at that blue sky. I mean, really, look. And she looks up and says, do you want a grilled cheese sandwich? And I do, very much. And when the sandwich appears, I say, wow. The yellow of melted cheese. The miraculous fact of yellow in the world. How could I have failed to appreciate yellow? And she nods, and my son goes inside. And all along the Congo, and in villages along the Ganges, or just down the road in broken-hearted Cleveland, there are men and women sitting in their perpetual night. But I have my beautiful boy. I have my beautiful wife, my yellow cheese, my azure sky. I'm one of the haves. I have light. In this poem finds me wrestling with one of the great questions. It's called Where Will You Go When You Die? Lord, with all due respect, would it be okay if I just stayed here in Cleveland? I could stop the poem there. In my own backyard, perhaps in the form of ashes strewn in the flower garden. I'll watch my kids playing in the sprinkler or chasing each other with their lightsabers through summer. I will observe my wife grilling chicken on the barbecue, not with the same skill, clearly, as her late husband, although she does seem to be improving, as I can see from my vantage point over here next to the hydrangeas, which I so often failed to fertilize or weed or even water back when I was alive. Make yourself useful, she used to say, and here I am doing exactly that. Women are astounding. They are amazing, and the astounding fact of creating a child, making a child, I just couldn't get over it while watching both of my wife's pregnancies. And I wrote this poem about it a couple of summers ago. I was sitting in a cafe, and there was a young woman next to me, very pregnant, at her table. And I watched her for a while and got this idea. The poem is called Multitasking. The pregnant young woman at the next table is checking her phone while at the same time crafting a delicate little skull, a couple of eyes, and two beautifully sculpted ears, not to mention a spleen and gallbladder. She's finished the tiny trip hammer heart going lickety-split, so she texts her mom while focusing quite intensely on colon, rectum, etc. And the stomach is just about wrapped up, but there's still plenty of work to be done on the spine, all those little bones, and the central nervous system with its confounding spaghetti of wiring. And now she orders an espresso before getting back to the toes, the feet. Jesus, how many goddamn bones does it take to build somebody? But it's okay, no sweat. She's actually enjoying it. And now she texts her husband, wine, Cheetos, pickles. Okay, she shouldn't be drinking, but it's just one glass at dinner. And all I've done at my table is read the obits while she's already finishing up the brain, which is always a challenge. This is a poem. A lot of poems about mothers. This is a poem for my mother. My father died as she raised three kids as a single mom. She was a nurse, a lot of double shifts, and I've really spent my adult life marveling at all she did for us and the sacrifices she went through. This is a poem for her. She was a voracious reader. There's nothing she loved to do more in the evening than read. The poem is called Anna Karenina. My mother was long dead before I was old enough to ask her who she was. But I'm reading Anna Karenina, which I recall her burning through late nights after a double shift, after the insertion of suppositories and the emptying of bedpans, after she fried us up some pork chops and opened a can of applesauce and a can of hominy and a can of fruit cocktail. She'd sit down with her cigarettes and red wine and read these big novels that took her away from thinking all day about money and into whatever Emma Bovary or Eleanor Dashwood was dealing with. She disappeared into French winters. She walked down London streets or sat quietly with Anna in her parlor. I look around in the novel for her cigarettes tonight, her glass of wine, anything she might have left behind. So, as Greg mentioned, we seem to be aging. And I too have written a poem about that. And here it is. It's called No Problem. I sit here aging at the Streetside Cafe, giving off the sickly yellow smoke of decay, while people walk by pretending not to notice, glancing away into the distance or down at their phones, doing their best out of politeness or shock to ignore me sitting here aging. And I don't blame them, it's hard to watch. And now the waitress, in her burning beauty, her lustrous, incandescent womanhood, walks up to me in a radiant cloud of youth and asks if I want another iced latte macchiato. But I'm aging so fast, I'm racing so quickly through time, I can barely hear her. And furthermore, I know what she really wants to say is, your aging is kind of gross. Kind of a turnoff. Maybe you could go do it somewhere else where it doesn't frighten the customers. And besides, it's not like there's anything I can do about it. And as I sit here with my skin peeling off and crumpling up like toilet paper, and my hair falling out on the table, and my teeth rotting, and my bones turning to glass, and all my organs drowning in the sludge of age, I croak to her as she floats in the cool, creamy oasis of her youthful lustrousness. I do manage to croak, yeah, another iced latte macchiato would be great. And from the far side of the universe, from the beautiful, bountiful, burning galaxy of her late teens, she says to the fast decaying, maybe starting to smell bad, just about to be covered with flies, old leathery carcass I'm becoming, she says, no problem. Except that there is actually a problem. So this is the title poem of Cheap Motels of My Youth, this book. And it just harkens back to a time after I'd finished my graduate degree, and anyone who's gone into teaching in the college, university, knows you go through this period, this hellish period of trying to get a job and going to all these job interviews at places all around the country and staying in the worst possible hotels because you don't have any money. And this is kind of an ode to those hotels and that time in my life before I got a job and became enormously wealthy. Cheap motels of my youth. They lay somewhere between the sleeping in the car era and my current and probably final era, the Best Western or Courtyard Marriott era. The wigwam, log cabin, cozy comfort, highway house, starlight, the lazy A. Just off the interstate, the roar of the 16-wheelers all night long, the dented tin door opening to the parking lot, the broken Coke machine muttering to itself, color TV, free HBO, hang yourself in our spacious closets. A job interview at some lost in the middle of nowhere branch campus of some agricultural college devoted to the research and development of the soybean and related byproducts. 5-course teaching load, 4 of them remedial comp. Candidate must demonstrate familiarity with the basic tenets of Christian faith. Chance of getting the job, 1 in 100. Lipstick cigarette butt under the bed. Toilet seat with its paper band, sanitized for your protection. Dead roach floating in the bowl. As the free HBO flickers in the background, you stare in the cracked mirror at a face too young, too full of hope to deserve this. And you wait for the Courtyard Marriott era to arrive. And it did. God. So this poem is for my father. My father struggled with alcoholism for his later years and finally died of it. And I always say to gatherings like this, if you want your kids to become poets, just become an alcoholic. It always happens. So this is from my father. It's called The Forge. I remember watching my father stop halfway up the driveway because my tricycle was blocking the way to the garage, and how he solved the problem by picking up the tricycle by the handlebars and smashing it through the windshield of our brand new family station wagon, his face red with scotch, his black tie and jacket flapping with effort, the tricycle making its way a little farther with each blow into the roomy interior of the latest model. As the safety glass relented, the tricycle and the windshield both praiseworthy for their toughness, the struggle between them somehow making perfect sense in midday on our quiet suburban street. The windshield, the anvil, the trike, the hammer, the marriage, the forge, and failure glowing in the heat, beaten and tempered, slowly taking shape. So kids have a different perception of time than adults, and that always fascinates me, how they see things happening. And this is a poem for you, Michael. It's dedicated to you from a few years ago, and it's called Avocados. My son comes into the kitchen and asks if he can have an avocado. Avocado, he says, loving the weight of each green syllable on his tongue. Avocados represent an immense step for him, an evolutionary leap far beyond the narrow confines of cornflakes, wherein he has dwelt for so long. The breast, the cornflake, the avocado. Such has been his journey thus far. You'll have to wait until they're ripe, honey, I tell him. Want some cornflakes instead? No thanks, he says, and wanders back into the world of being 5, while I'm doing the dishes at this point. I start thinking about ripening and how glad I am that it takes time, and his own ripening will be years in the making. Years, I say aloud, enjoying that long, luxurious syllable like a cat stretching out on my tongue as Michael comes in again. It's been 5 minutes, and asks, "Are they ripe yet?" "No, not quite yet." "Want some cornflakes in the meantime?" "That's okay," he says. "I'll wait." And speaking of time, I love playing around with time in my poems. Unexpected shifts and collisions of times and places in my life. And that's what I'm doing in this poem. But I'm dedicating this one to Jody. It's called Salad. It is a summer evening in 1948. My mother and father are in the backyard of the little duplex they rented. Summer evening in St. Louis. I have yet to exist, but nonetheless, I know the 2 hamburgers are on the grill and the beer is cold in the humid dusk. A dog barks next door. My father turns the burgers. My mother goes in to set the table for 2 and make a salad. There's more beer in the fridge. They don't even have a TV. Nobody does. In the kitchen that does not include me, the burgers are great, and my father says something that makes my mother laugh so hard that I can hear her in my backyard tonight in Cleveland, where thanks to them, I exist. At the grill, a beer in my hand, a dog barking, my wife in the kitchen, making a salad. Just going to read a couple of more poems tonight. This is for, I'm doing all these dedications, since you were nice enough to come, you guys. And by the way, it is so nice to come back here and see so many familiar faces. I've been here a number of times, and I've been seeing so many of you for years, and it's so great to catch up after all this time. This is a poem for Michael. And before I read it, I should mention there's a word in it. The word is Phidian, P-H-I-D-I-A-N, from the ancient Greek sculptor Phidias, who was noted for the extraordinary delicacy and beauty of his busts of the human head. It's called The Scar. My son slipped on the ladder to the pool and smacked his head, blood pouring down his small shoulders, the doctor stitching him whole. 3 years on, after a haircut, the scar still rises. A quarter moon a woman will ask about as they lie there one night, her fingers in his hair, her voice in his ear, the secret delight of him, a bit like burnt toast in her nostrils as she takes his strangeness into her. What she won't know is how the frail Phidian skull I held that day in my hands resounded on the hot concrete. It echoed all summer, less like an egg cracking in a bowl or a world breaking than the wild beating of love against my heart. Dear girl who will one day win him, that part of the boy is mine. And the last poem I'm going to read tonight is for Alex, because I used to do this with you, Alex. Don't think I could do it anymore, but I used to. The poem is called Weather. My father would lift me to the ceiling in his big hands and ask, "How's the weather up there?" And it was good, the weather of being in his hands, his breath of scotch and cigarettes, his face smiling from the world below. Oh, Daddy was the lullaby I sang back down to him as he stood on earth, my great white-shirted father, home from work, his gold wristwatch and wedding band gleaming as he held me above him for as long as he could before his strength failed. Down there in the world, I find myself standing in tonight, my little boy, looking down from his flight below the ceiling, cradled in my hands, his eyes wide and already staring into the distance beyond the man, asking him again and again, "How's the weather up there?" Thank you.